I'm honored to welcome Anne, whose story is a powerful reminder of what can happen when we don't have access to safe and legal abortion. Anne, please start your story whenever you're ready.
Well, my story predates Deb by almost 30 years. Back to the good old days, let me take you with me to the back seat of a car in Tijuana, Mexico. To my left is a large man who had just separated me from my boyfriend and a whole bunch of money and led me to this trip to where I was going to have my abortion. My driver was another man. So there I was, alone with these two strangers, no passport, in a foreign country. Nobody that I knew or loved or cared about was with me or even knew where I was going to wind up. What I knew was that within a couple of hours, I would at least be in pain, maybe have some serious complications, and possibly be dead. But I also knew that I wouldn't be pregnant. This was the sort of experience that lawmakers of my day thought was appropriate for women who have sex. At that time, this was before the pill was widely available. We relied on such things and ineffective measures as condoms and the rhythm method. The one time that I did approach a doctor about getting birth control pills, I was instead given a lecture and reminded how immoral I was to be having sex out of wedlock. My abortion was in 1965, 52 years ago, and a full 8 years before Roe v. Wade. It wasn't even on the horizon. I was less than, just barely 19 years old. I was a sophomore at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and I was in a committed relationship. But I sure as shootin' wasn't ready to be married, and certainly didn't want or need or was not able to support a child. My education was incomplete, and I was a responsible person, and I knew that I would never bear a child that I did not commit to raise to adulthood. So those 52 years ago, why was I even considering to make the choice that I made, given the really dire consequences that were possible? And all I can say is, like Deb, it was the right thing to do. And I was not going to burden my family or anybody else. I was going to take responsibility and make what had to happen, happen. Now, since that time, until last year, I had never shared my story, and nobody had ever asked. And at the time, I decided that this is just nuts, what's going on. And the assault on women was, I thought we were done with all that. You know, I marched in the 60s and 70s, well, 70s, and I thought we were done, but clearly we're not. So I remember being at an event for Planned Parenthood when a man, livid, red in the face, came up to me and was berating me for supporting Planned Parenthood. And finally he asked me, he said, "Did you ever have an abortion?" And I said, "Yes, I did, and I would do it again." And he stormed off, you know, talking about having blood on my hands and so forth. And I just felt like, well, I can't do anything. He's going to have to be attrited, and we're going to have to, you know, educate some other people. He was a hopeless case. When I hear pro-lifers talk about how glad they are that their mother chose not to have an abortion, I think of my own two daughters. And if I had not arrested the development of what I think of as a blueprint for a child, then I would never have met my stepdaughter, and my natural daughter would never have been born. And those are just terrible things to think about for me. So let's just wind up back in Tijuana in the cab, and I remember driving up through a very affluent neighborhood to a white hacienda with gates, and I just felt relief. This was not the back alley I was dreading. And inside, it turned out to be a professional, well-run, procedure-oriented clinic. I had very little pain, no complications at the end. But I was one of the lucky ones.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So what would you like our legislators and our president to know as they're making decisions about access to abortion?
Well, just give me 3 hours. Last year, my comments focused on the importance of not imposing someone else's religious beliefs and the separation of church and state, and how important it is for our lawmakers to really recognize that. But this year, there's something more insidious going on. When I heard Representative Stephen King talking about the right people having babies and needing to get up the birth rate, my mind goes, oh, and how are you planning to do that, Representative King? Well, let's just restrict the ability to have, let's force breeding. And I think this is a very dangerous thing. And then I hear another lawmaker saying, a woman is not an individual. She has invited in and is hosting another individual whose rights are superior to her own. This is nuts. We need to stop it. And I think you lawmakers better get your empathy gene working.
Thank you so much, Anne.